Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown with Hangout 56. Hello, everyone who's in the chat room. Let me see who's here. Let's see. Let me start at the top. Let's see. Christine is here. Molly's here. Anne is here. Lisa Ann is here. Florence is here. And let's see. Heather is here. Bookworm. I have not seen Bookworm here before, so that's nice to see. And Carrie is here, and Martin is here, and a few other people are here. I've got to check something out. Hold on one second, folks, while I check this out. And by the way, if you'd like to be in the chat room, you can do that. Hold on one second here. I just have to check something out. Hold on. Interesting. Okay. I'm having little technical problems here, so I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here with my technical problems. Okay. Okay, all's good. Anyway, welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. Did I say Martin's here and Lisa S is here and Carrie's here? And if you'd like to be in the chat room, join Patreon. The link is below, and you can join in all the live shows. And if you don't want to join all the live shows, you can always see every one of the shows just on YouTube at the normal time. And please do like and subscribe. That helps support the channel. And please do hit the bell to be notified. And also, I keep telling people this because I'm getting these requests. Check my playlist for all the playlists for all the cases I've already done. Or you can do the simple way, which I kind of use myself. If you're interested in one particular thing, you just go into the search engine in YouTube and you put in Profiler Pat Brown and the name of the person's case. And the video will pop up. So that way you don't have to go searching through the entire playlist if you know you want one specific thing. So anyway, everybody can hear and see me properly. I'm just checking before I go on to. I want to talk a little bit more about the McCann case because I know everybody is obviously interested in what happened to Jerry and Kate McCann and the European Court of Human Rights. Is that what they call it? The European Court of Human Rights. What a fancy term. Can you see and hear me, guys? Do let me know before I blather on. But I did a video on the new stuff that came out with Kate and Jerry. They lost their libel case against Gonçalo Amaral, the Portuguese police detective on the case and the one who ran the case. And so Gonçalo Amaral finally is freed unless they go for an appeal. And when I say freed, I mean freed from the stress of their lawsuits against him and all the trauma it's caused him through a great portion of his life. And of course, there are those who truly believe that Kate and Jerry had absolutely nothing to do with their daughter going missing. Thank you. You could see and hear me. Okay, good. There are many who think they had nothing to do with her going missing, and therefore they're people who've suffered. Look at this. I have a cowlick. It just drives me crazy. Sorry. I'm going to do my hair on the show. I'm like, what is that? It's sticking up. But they'll say, Kate and Jerry lost a daughter, and what the detective Gonçalo Amaral is experiencing in comparison to what they're going through is tiny. In a way, that's true. I mean, losing a child compared to having your reputation attacked and, having a book taken off the market, which is the same for me, except, he was the bigger target than I was. Those are very stressful things, and they can mess your life up. Gonçalo Amaral he had a really rough time when that occurred. So, when we're comparing suffering, I always find it a little difficult. It's kind of like somebody has a fatal disease, and then you come up and you're very sick with something, and you're just like, that person says, "How you doing?" And you're like, "Well, you have a fatal disease, and I'm going to whine about having bronchitis, or whatever it is you've got, or my arm hurts." It's difficult because it doesn't mean you don't have suffering. It just means you recognize there's is quite worse, but it doesn't mean you don't exist either. So you certainly have rights as well. So I want to point out two things with this case that I didn't point out in my video, and that is the issue of what is their responsibility, Kate and Jerry McCann, in what occurred and how people view them. Because we're, even if we're victims in certain ways, it doesn't mean that we didn't also add to the way they view us, including the police. So if you do squirrely things, people question you. Everyone knows that the McCanns did neglect their children. There is no question about that. They left their children unattended in a foreign country in a basically a hotel room. It's a vacation flat, but basically a hotel room on the ground floor, right next to a parking lot. That is neglect, 100%. So they brought things upon themselves. They brought people's disrespect for them upon themselves. It's not like they went to sleep and somebody crawled through a window and stole their child out of the bed. That would be a different matter. They left their children unattended. So that's the first thing they did, which made people question what kind of people they were. The next thing they did was when they explained what happened, their stories changed. That causes suspicion again. And then their handling of the media, the way they presented themselves, the way they wouldn't answer questions, the way they attacked the police, the way they ran the country, all of these things made people look at them skeptically, saying, there's a lot of things I don't like about you and your behavior and the things you say and the things you do. And therefore, they brought a lot of negativity toward them, which in other cases, you have parents who lose children and nobody has any negative feelings at all toward them at all. They're like totally on the parent side, like everybody is, because they don't have any questions about what happened or the parents' behaviors and all of that. Now, one could say, well, as we often hear, who are we to judge somebody whose child has gone missing? That, how they respond in a situation like that. All right, people do respond in different ways, but there are things that people do which don't make people comfortable. And if that's what you do, it is the way it is. And you can't blame everybody else. Now, here's what I would have said if I were Kate and Jerry. They could have solved this problem a long time ago with Gonzalo Ramiro, with me, Tony Bennett, anybody who has written stuff that questions what happened. All they needed to say to the world was, I understand that due to some of the aspects of the case, there are those who question what actually happened. We understand, like Jerry said, you have the right to purport a theory. We do believe people have the right to purport a theory based on facts. We understand that people's theories may differ, and some people may think we are suspicious. And even if you look at police cases, you'll even have police detectives who disagree with one another or profilers who disagree with one another. So we are not going to address this profiler or that and this detective or that about their analyses. Our focus is on finding Madeleine because that's where we come from. And they have the right to say whatever they think, write their books, and people have the right to discuss it. And so we're not going to get involved in that. We also want to say that we understand that, maybe people see us in a certain way. We certainly did leave our children unattended, and that was just plain wrong. We look back and we think, what were we thinking? That was just a horrible thing to do. We were wrong. We were neglectful. And we understand why people have issues with us because of that. And we also know that, maybe personality-wise, some people just don't particularly go with our personalities, but maybe we're a little coldish or a little stiff, or maybe we just say things in a way that people don't feel comfortable with and make them suspicious again. And we understand all of this. And we're just going to say, we're just going to look for Madeleine. That's what we're going to keep our focus on. And we're going to let people think what they think. And we're going to try to do our best to maybe answer some of those questions along the way because we want everybody's help. Now, if they had said that, what do you think would have actually happened if they hadn't sued Gonzalo Amaral, taken my book off the market, gone after Tony Bennett, said all the things they said publicly about the disparaging things, started these massive lawsuits that went on and on. What if they just said what I just said? Would you just think that's a better way to respond? It's very simple. They could have done that in a 5-minute interview and everything would have been left alone. So what do you think? I'm curious. Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, that is also true. They refused to they refused to do the reconstruction. That's true. But I'm not going to go here and discuss the whole case again because I've done that in my videos and in my book. I don't want to do that. I'm just asking about how would the have responded had they just been honest and open and said, hey, people could think what they want to think, and we're not going to go around suing everybody. We're not going to waste our time with that. I think they would have had a lot better response from people. People would have thought of them in a better way, and they wouldn't have wasted the time if they supposedly wanted to spend finding Madeleine. So that really, that was just something I think is very important. So when people say, oh, well, how could people treat them this way? It's because of the way they came across to the public and that they never, ever reached out to the public in a good way that would have alleviated some of this issue. And they should never have sued Gonzalo Amaral. We're taking my book off the market. But let me say the second part of what I wanted to say. Does somebody have the right to purport a theory? And the answer to that to me is yes and no. That there's a point I want to. Yeah, they built an industry around it. This is also true, Martin, and that's one of the things that made them and people viewed them very negatively because there was so much that they put into that they shouldn't have put into that. Yeah, they did. They made a brand. That's true. Let's see I just want to see what Heather says. If they want people on their side, they have to have a reason. The McCanns didn't really give people a reason. Had they taken your approach, they would have. Thank you, Heather. Heather is new here, by the way. So hi, Heather. So yeah, I think that they just, it may be that they have just crappy personalities. I find them both not overly likable. And that doesn't mean they're guilty of anything. It just means I don't find them very likable. And maybe they can't fix that. So that sometimes that's a problem. People are the way they are. I often point out that people are the same before the child disappears or gets murdered than they are after. So in other words, if you're a person who's very warm and cozy and very gushy emotionally, and your child disappears, you'll be that way afterwards. But if you're like, you have a different kind of personality, like let's say me, I'm a kind of some people say I'm cynical. I call myself realistic. I have a black sense of humor. That's true. I'm not overly emotional. I do get emotional, but I'm not overly emotional. I'm not very girly, sweet, gushy stuff. I don't do that. So maybe if my child disappeared, something happened to her afterwards, I would be coming across kind of cold, perhaps. It's possible. So it may be they can't fix their personalities because that's who they are. But they should also understand that that is the way they are seen and stop going, well, how dare you? I mean, if people look at me and think certain things, I kind of go, I understand that. They're not wrong, about the way I am. But they could have alleviated some of that themselves. The second thing I wanted to point out is, does somebody have the right to purport a theory, as Gonzalo did, as I did, as we see all over the internet, on different YouTube channels and in Reddit and all the other places, and journalism as well. Do we have the right to purport a theory? Well, yes, we do. But that there is that line where this is a theory and this is libel. Okay. I have been libeled. I know what that's like. Libeling is where, in my case, it's been journalists. They will take my words and they will cut them so that part of my sentence is missing. And so therefore, what I seem to be saying is opposite from what I actually said. They ask me for an analysis and they specifically leave out stuff and add in stuff that makes my analysis something different than what I actually analyzed, making me look like an idiot. That's usually the methodology. And therefore, I've been libeled. And I've been libeled by, I did get an apology. What was it? I forgot who, the son. The son apologized to me for lying, for libeling me in the Madeleine McCann case over the Smith sighting, because what they said, I said, was that the Smith sighting was important because it was the most important. I can't remember how they put it, but it was like criminal profiler Pat Brown says that the Smith sighting is the most important piece of the case of the abduction. And I'm like, whoa. That's not what I said. I said that's the most important thing in the case to me because the McCanns ignored them. I didn't say because it was the abductor. They said, yeah, because the Smith guy was the abductor. I'm like, that is not what I said. So I had to fight for like months. And they finally wrote an apology, which which is on the internet, but, probably never got printed. And of course I don't get paid for that. And nobody will ever see it, so that's libel. Now, so you cannot libel. And what happens with Gonzalo Amaral is he told the facts because he had access to the facts. He presented the facts and then he gave his opinion about the facts. You can do that. I presented in my book the facts of the case, and then I gave an analysis based on the facts. Now, my analysis could be wrong, but analysis is not libel. An analysis is an analysis. That's different than when you go on. I've seen people do this in the McCann case. They'll say things like, the McCanns are pedophiles. There's zero evidence of this. That's libel, okay? That's just straight up libel. They were doing a wife swapping, or what's the other word for it? So they're all having this big sex kind of orgy thing going on. There's no evidence of that with the McCanns. And there has been no evidence that they neglected their children in the past. So if you're going to make a theory on anything, you got to use evidence and not make up a bunch of crap, okay? And if you have somebody said something about somebody else, that's not evidence. That's somebody's claiming that. You can't take somebody's claim and then base your analysis on their claim. That becomes libel too, because, hey, people claim things about me all the time. So let's say somebody claims that they saw Pat Brown, snorting cocaine at a bar, and then somebody else says, well, see, Pat Brown clearly has a drug habit. That's libel because, first of all, I've never touched cocaine in my life. And whoever said that about me just claimed that. Unless they have proof I did that for you to base your opinion on, you can't say that. That's libel. But Gonzalo Amaral used facts and then gave an analysis. I used facts and gave an analysis. And that's why they lost in court, because there was no libel. Okay. So I think that's really important to understand. The third thing I want to mention this too. A lot of people are very, very excited that they lost in court, not because it frees up Gonzalo Amaral from this torture they put him through, and he can keep his second book on the market. And they're saying, oh, see, this now is going to change everything. This means the Portuguese can now go after them and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this changes nothing except for the libel issue. This is not about the actual investigation. And this is not about Christian B. This is just about the libel issue. It solved one issue. And will it change the public's opinion of the McCanns? No. People who think the McCanns are likely involved in the disappearance of the child will still think that. People who think they're not involved will still think that. One will say, Gonzalo Amaral, hey, he finally, finally proves him right. No, it doesn't prove him right. It just proves that he didn't libel them. And the other people are saying, the poor McCanns, now this horrible man in Portugal, has done something wrong to them again. That's not going to change anything. So don't get all excited and jump up and down and say, oh my God, the case is going to come to a close. No, it's not, unfortunately. I wish it were, but I don't see that it is. So, let me look back. And Molly says they bad-mouthed everyone and everything, even Eddie and Keela, who may end up being their demise. Well, actually, no, again, Eddie and Keela can't prove anything because that can't be used in the court of law. Eddie and Keela did not find Madeleine's body. Now, when a cadaver dog, blood dog, makes a huge difference in a case, is when they actually find the body. Now they're sniffing around, and then you can dig it up, and there it is. Otherwise, it's just interesting information that leads the police to believe that a body may have been there, that blood may have been there. It doesn't prove. It's like baby Lisa, the same thing. The cadaver dog hit next to the mom's bed in baby Lisa, but baby Lisa has never been found. So you can think all you want about the dog hitting on there, but that's not proof for court. And it didn't. If the dog finds the body, then you got proof for the court. Other than that, no. That's interesting information, and that's pretty much what it is. So you can, yes, see, this is a thing. It's a basis. Okay, this is a good point. Good point, Molly. Eddie and Keela and their alerts are noted on page 2 of the ECHR opinion, and ECHR is the European Court of Human Rights, as the basis for rightful suspicion of the McCanns. That is true. Okay, there's a difference between rightful suspicion and proof. Okay, again, the evidence is not that Maddie's body was there. That's not the evidence the dogs came up with. The evidence is that a cadaver and blood dog hit. They had alerts in that area. That's the evidence. There were alerts. That's not proof. They're alerts. And can it add to your suspicion? Yes, it can. And in my own book, and I've always said that when you add all the different facts together, the fact that they hit that spot, that they alerted there, should be taken into consideration as part of the totality of information that would lead to this analysis that I'm going to give. So again, this leads to a theory. It doesn't lead to proof. So my analysis of the McCanns, and I say it over and over again, I've never said the McCanns are guilty of what happened to Madeleine outside of leaving her alone. I've never said they gave her medicine that OD'd her or caused her to fall from that couch. I've never said that they moved her body and buried it. I've never said that is what happened. What I've said is, based on the evidence, my theory is this may have happened. This could be what we're looking at. And from the point of a theory, then the police have to continue with their theory until they find solid enough evidence to convict in a court of law. So we can have all the suspicions we want, but yeah. And of course, that is what many of us love that statement. Ask the dog, says Jerry McCann. And he did that very snidely, which again is one of the things that make people distrust him, but doesn't prove anything. Molly says the DNA samples taken from where they alerted can be used. This is true. If the DNA proves that it's Maddie's DNA in those locations, and there was not another explanation for Maddie's DNA to be there, then it's very useful. Again, it has to get to the point of absolute proof, which is why nothing's in court, you can't go someplace you can't go yet. So I just want that to be clear, because I think there's a lot of jumping to conclusions and saying this is true when this is not true. It's interesting. Lisa says, we did. Jerry said, what? Jerry and they said something happened in the flat. I'm not sure what that means. I don't get that. I'm sorry. I don't know what that means. Something did happen in the flat. Madeleine disappeared from the flat. Maybe she was kidnapped from the flat. Maybe she was killed in the flat by an abductor. I don't believe those three things necessarily are true. But just because, again, all these things are interesting, but you have to not jump to a conclusion because one thing is said. And I think if you go back to the show I just did on Julie Ferguson, I'll link that one below, because I'm going to talk also about Delphi based on this issue as well. The problem is there's a lot of coincidences. There's a lot of people who say a lot of stuff. Even people who are not guilty say guilty things, okay? You have to be very careful of this. And the case that I was going to do this case I've been involved in that I worked on 24 years ago. It's in court now, and I was supposed to testify, and I got out of it. But anyway, information is coming out that backs up everything I've said about this so far. I'm going to do the whole case as soon as the jury comes to a conclusion. But in that case, I'm going to just say this. There was an issue of false confession. And people ask, how the heck can, somebody just confess to killing somebody they didn't kill? It happens all the time. And I mean, I have trouble understanding it because I think you could, I'm saying this because I'm not in that situation. I'm thinking you could keep me awake for 48 hours because I've worked in the hospitals a lot of my life, and I've worked for so many hours straight. I've worked for 40 hours straight without sleep. I've been 3 days without sleep. I know how it is to be without sleep. So I feel like I could really withstand this. My brain can withstand. But I don't know. Maybe after not being able to sleep for so many hours and they're torturing me and I don't mean torture physical, but they're asking me the same questions over and over and they're trying to implant ideas in my head. If you get a detective who does he gets false confessions. And in this case that I'm going to do the show on, this guy was famous for getting false confessions, and he got the police agency got sued hugely because a guy falsely confessed and ended up on death row, and he didn't do it. And I know this particular detective. I don't like him, but he gets people to falsely confess. So the problem is, if you're going to base something on this little thing and this little thing and this little thing, and not everything, you can get a very skewed idea. And there's coincidences and there's people saying things and they're not necessarily so. So I just think you have to be very careful about that. Oh, wait a minute. Carrie says, I don't think Pat saw your entire comment. I got it. Okay, I'm moving up to Lisa S. says, I need to take communication classes. Okay, wait a minute. Let me go back to Lisa. Oh. This is the problem with the chat room when you're trying to see all these things coming in. Okay. So Lisa says, we did, Jerry, and they said something happened in the flat. And then she says, yeah. Wait a minute, where is it? Oh, no, it was Martin typed, ask the dogs, and I was answering for the dogs. Okay. I get it now. The dogs have their opinion, and their opinion may be right. But it can't. It's hard to talk to those dogs. I think they're dead now, aren't they? Sadly, I don't think they're around anymore. But you're right. The dogs had their opinion. It should be respected, but can't prove that they're right, unfortunately. Now I want to go to Delphi because I want to just keep going on this concept of what do we know, and therefore what do we base our analysis on if we're not sure what we even know. Now in Delphi right now, this is the Delphi murders. They're over there in the river right now, and they've been searching in this river for 5 weeks. 5 weeks. Now, let me see if I can get the basic information on what was happening there. Essentially, this whole recent thing started, the Delphi case. See if I can find this. Did I just have a thing on it? Yeah. Hold on a second. I just for people's sake that don't know what the heck the case is about, I have to at least mention what the case is about. So let me just give a 1 minute thing on this. Okay. There were 2 teenage girls who were murdered, and their names are Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Okay. And one of them had taken, was it Abby? Okay. Sorry. Libby actually pressed the video button and took a video of this guy saying, go down. The guy said, down the hill. And they went down the hill and they were murdered. So he's the guy that was on the bridge, this really creepy tall bridge. So anyway, he's called Bridge Guy because nobody knows who he is. But people are always comparing the look of the guy and the sound of his voice to this. It matches this person. It matches this person. It matches this person. And everyone's absolutely sure about which person is the guy who did it. Okay, so the suspect, there's a guy that was arrested. Let me pull it up here so I can just explain this more correctly. The girls were online and they were one of these chat roomy things with a guy named Anthony Schatz, and he was this hot looking dude. And I guess they're like, oh my God, look at him. Well, he was a model and it wasn't him. Somebody had used his picture and was catfishing them. Okay. And they found that one of the guys that was talking to them and catfishing them was a guy named Keegan Kline. And he does not look like the guy on the bridge. He's a very big guy, big tub of lard, essentially. And but they did arrest him for child pornography, and the reason he was catfishing the girls and other girls was because he was trying to get new pictures of a whole bunch of young people. He's a real sleazebag. His daddy, Tony Kline, and also is kind of creepy dude too. So some people think Tony Kline looks more like the bridge guy. Some people think they did this thing together. Some people think it isn't either one of them, and it's somebody else. So everybody's got an opinion. But apparently, recently, what happened was, Keegan Kline's been he's been in jail, and they took him down to the river, and for some reason, and now for 5 weeks they've been in that river, and they've been very careful to put these. They're doing everything by square foot so that they're making sure they don't miss anything, and they've been going through this river for 5 weeks. Okay. So now there's a lot of chatter on the internet that how this case is about to come to a conclusion, that it's clearly going to be Keegan Kline or Keegan Kline and his daddy or Keegan ratted out daddy. That's the theory running around the net. Now, the problem here, which is why I tell people calm down, and before you start jumping through all this kind of ideas here, you just don't even know what the police are looking for. You don't know what happened. As to why they're searching. So it's interesting to me that they had actually arrested Keegan Kline very early on. I'm going to also put the link to the Delphi murders. I did an analysis on that. They arrested him early on for his sleazy behavior on the internet. But it's been years, and they've never connected him well enough to this crime to charge him with anything, nor did they charge his father with anything. So, and they've looked at other people as well. So the question is, did he actually, Keegan Kline or his dad, kill the two girls? Or is it just that they were online and it was coincidental? Now, some people say there are no such things as coincidences, but gosh darn, I find them all the time in this line of work. I mean, I used to think there weren't coincidences, but now I'm pretty sure there are. And there are people who are saying, for example, that Keegan Kline did some things that made them really suspicious. Like he started searching for things on the internet about DNA and things like that, voice things. And they're like, see, he's searching all of this because he thinks they're onto him. Well, let's take a different look at it. Let's say you're a creepy dude and you've been online catfishing and you've been getting lots of nude pictures of girls, right? And then these two girls you talk to end up getting killed. Now you're pretty freaked. And you see this guy on the bridge and you think, gosh, what are people thinking about him? Do they think that's me? Do they think my voice is the same as his voice? Or does it match somebody else? Are they thinking it's somebody else and not me? I didn't do it, but I just want to make sure. I want to know what people are thinking. I want to know how the evidence thing works. So he starts typing in all these things because he's trying to figure out, oh my God, I hope they're not going to come after me. He could be innocent of that murders, not innocent of the other crap he's done, innocent of the murders and just freaking out, trying to figure out whether he's going to be accused of them and charged with them. That doesn't mean he did them. And so that's when people jump to those conclusions. That's not facts. That's interesting. Okay. It's interesting. He's looking at the stuff, but we don't know exactly why. Now the police are down there searching the river. I'm going to ask you. So before I go on, what is your guess as to what's in the river that they're looking for? What do you think it would be? What do you think? Okay, while waiting, Carrie says, it's surprising there's no resolutions to the Delphi murders. Well, first of all, personally, I'm not fond of the sheriff. I think that guy has not given me any confidence. Everything he's said and done really bother me, okay? I don't know how good he is. And this is something you have to understand. when you get a jury, you roll the dice. When you get a police detective, you roll the dice. You can get a detective who's just out of this world, great, logical, has worked lots of crimes, knows what he's doing. And then you can get Barney Fife, doesn't know anything about anything. Or some blowhard guy that just, thinks he's so smart, but he's not. And he just comes to all the wrong conclusions. It's rolling the dice. So I don't know. This case may not have come to a conclusion because they could have blown the whole thing. It could be that they didn't handle the evidence right, that they didn't understand what they were looking at, that they looked in all the wrong directions. Or it could be they did a good job, but there's just no solid evidence to arrest anybody. And now I've heard that there's supposed to be DNA, which is interesting. I don't know how accurate that is. See, here's something I don't know if it's a fact or it's something that's going around and is not quite true. If there's DNA in the case, if there is, and then that DNA does not match Keegan Kline or Tony Kline because they got both of those dudes' DNA, it's not them. If there's real DNA evidence of the murderer. But then again, maybe there isn't DNA evidence from the murder. And there you have a problem because then they can't link it. And so maybe they're looking for something else that would link it. Okay, so Mary says a murder weapon. Yes, that could be what they're looking for. It could be that they're looking for a knife. They're looking for a gun. We don't exactly know what happened with the girls. I'm not on the inside. Again, I don't have facts. It would appear he used a gun to get the girls to go down the hill, but we don't see a gun. So I don't know. He could have used a knife and said the same thing. Did he have a gun and then use a knife in the crime? I don't know. I hear there was blood, so I'm going to think there's likely a knife, but I don't know. So somebody could have thrown a knife or a gun away. All right. They might search. So let's say Keegan Kline says, yeah, I did it, or my dad did it. And he threw the knife in the river around about here. Then they go search for the knife. Now, if they find a knife in the river, do they know if it's the knife that was part of the crime scene? So it would have to be something like you go back to the house and they got, one of those blocks with the knives in it. You got 1, 2, 3, 4's missing, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but 4 matches the one that was in the river. It's in the river, so it's probably not any physical any DNA or blood with that. It's been in the river too darn long. So it's probably just a knife. I don't know how much that's going to tell you. Depending on how they were killed, whether the knife matches how they were killed, is that enough? If it's a gun, it all depends. Did that person use the gun in the commission of the crime other than, go down the hill? Because somebody could have a gun and freak out that the police are going to come and find my gun and think I used that gun to make the girls go down the hill, and they could have thrown the gun away. And it has nothing to do with actual crime. You see how convoluted this can get. And a defense attorney is going to eat this stuff up and say, you don't have any proof that gun was the gun. So I don't know. They could be looking for a weapon. That's one possibility. Florence says a laptop. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Hold on a second. I'll get back to that in a second. I want to do the laptop one first. A laptop. That's possible. Laptops have been tossed in crimes before because whatever's on the laptop is incriminating. Yeah, it could be that indeed. If one was missing, and so yeah, I mean that could be something. It could be a camera that took pictures of the girls. It could be somebody pointed out. He had a gun. The click is heard. I wouldn't go with that. I'm sorry. Every time I hear about the stupid stuff about clicks being heard and being heard, a lot of times that's people's perception, and it's not necessarily so. I'm not saying it isn't so, Mary. It could be, but I don't know that there's any proof that that's what that sound was. I mean, I didn't hear it. I don't know. Did anybody else hear a click and know it was absolutely a gun sound? So I have to just be very careful of that, because I personally think he probably had a gun, but I don't know. Okay, let's see what you say. Bridge got a gun. Click was heard on Libby's recording. Info. Okay, that's again. Okay, here we go. The info per the family who listened to the recording. That's what the family says. Again, this is not proof. It's not evidence. This is a claim. Watch out for claims. I've seen families claim all kinds of stuff that's not true, and they're like, oh, I heard this and I did this is that. I'm like, it isn't even so. So you got to be careful about claims. So unless the police say that was a click you heard from a gun, we do not know that it was a click from a gun. So be very careful. There's a story in the news that a trash cleanup crew found a rusty loaded gun on the riverbank in 2019. Again, and I'm not trying to say this isn't useful stuff. The police take this stuff and then they try to analyze it and see whether it means anything. It could just be an old gun somebody once tossed into a river. It may have nothing to do with the crime. And so that's what you're looking for, stuff that really makes sense. Molly says, okay, they're looking for what Keegan Klein said was thrown in there. Okay. Do we know that's, okay, stop right here. Do we know that's what they're looking for, what Keegan Klein said was thrown in there? Did the police say Keegan Klein told us certain things were thrown in the river and that's why we're looking? Or are we guessing that? I don't know that the police have ever said that. Would it make sense that Keegan Klein said something and therefore they went to look in the river? Yes, it makes sense. We don't know that. Maybe an electronic device, maybe. Thumbnail, thumb drive, possibly. Knife, possibly. A burner phone is another possibility because, if you're doing naughty things, it could be a burner phone. Pat, do you have any thoughts on the reports on the police about ritualistic characteristics at the crime scene or staging? No, I don't really have any thoughts because I don't know if they know what they're talking about. I've seen that ritualistic characteristic thing said so many times on scenes. I know there's no ritualism at all, just the way the body fell, and staging again. What does that mean? What do they mean by staging? A lot of the certain police who analyze these things have watched way too many FBI shows, and they make these claims, just like you do in the FBI program. There was ritualistic characteristics, and based on what? And so no, I don't necessarily believe it at all. Could it be true? Again, that's a claim by a police detective, and that's not proof at all. I'm sorry. I have no clue if there's any validity to that. Martin said, didn't the cop say? Yes, he did. It would be solved within 3 years. So they have to be seen to be doing something. There's an interesting point. Now, there's two ways of thinking about that, Martin. One way is, and I've seen this viewpoint, that when they said this is going to be solved within 3 years, it's because they know who it is, they're onto it, and they're just trying to get the evidence. I found the 3-year thing rather bizarre. Who the heck says? And that's why I don't trust this particular guy. I'm like, who says 3 years? Now, how about just it's going to be solved in the near future? But 3 years, what's a 3-year mark? Oh, that's when you're retiring? Is that what it is? And then, so they have to be seen doing something. All right. There's another point. They have a lot of pressure. So they could have put Keegan Klein in a room. That's why I say, gotta watch out what happens. Keegan, what happened we think you did it. We want to know, where's your burner phone? Did you throw away a knife? Did you throw away a gun? Did you do this? Did you do that? And Keegan finally goes, yeah, I threw away my burner phone in the river. He just wants to go out and get a hamburger. Maybe he just wants to see the police scouring the river for like 5 weeks and go, yeah, about time you just waste your time. I don't know. Keegan Klein's making up crap, and just getting a kick out of watching them, spend day after day after day digging up the mud for no reason whatsoever. Or did Keegan Klein actually throw away like a burner phone? But it had nothing to do again with the murder. Maybe he just didn't want them to see what was on that burner phone, but it may not be that. This is what we don't know. What? Abby says, is that a gun? He has a gun. When did Abby say, is that a gun? I don't know when Abby said that. What? And that proves that's a gun. I don't know. I don't know where I don't even know where that comes from. Again, unless I see it specifically coming in an evidence report, that I know it's evidence. I try not to go there, and I wish other people wouldn't go there either, because this is what starts all this rabbit hole things on the internet. This is what starts all these theories and finger pointing at people. And I don't mind people having a theory. I agree with Jerry. You have the right to purport a theory, even if you're not a criminal profiler or a detective. You have the right. And some people purport really good theories who are not either of those things. But I want you to put it on evidence. That's why it's the educational channel. It should be based on evidence, not something you heard, not something some YouTuber said that doesn't have any proof of. You can think it's interesting. I'm not going to say you can't be interested. I'm simply saying we don't know if these things are true until we know they're actually true. So Heather says, lots of laugh. That's why I asked. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they thought of the bodies, whether, I mean, there's certain things that are clearly staged things. I don't know what the stage part even means for that, because usually when you're talking about staging, you're talking about somebody who's faking something. Like a husband wants everyone to think his wife was raped by a serial killer when he killed her. So he stages the crime to look like it's a sex crime. That's staging. I don't know how those girls would be staged, because clearly to me it's a serial killer. So I'm like, what's he going to stage it as? Ritualistic killing. I've seen very few crimes that are ritualistic. And any kind of ritualistic to me would mean some kind of religious thing, or the satanic-y things everybody's into. Something done where, let's say, the girls were murdered and then they were wrapped up as nuns and put a cross on each one of their chests. That could be something, but I don't know what they even mean by ritualistic. If you take Danny Rowling, for example, so, he liked to he liked to, what do you want to say with him? He liked to sometimes place the bodies in positions that would shock the detective when he walked through the door. Oh, crap. Or that after the crime scene photos were taken, those would be really great crime scene photos. If you want to call that staging, I just consider manipulating the bodies in a way that you find amusing, So sometimes it's a matter of semantics. Again, per the family. I'm not going to do anything about the family. Sorry. I don't know if the family, I cannot, the per the family does not mean evidence to me. And I refuse to start putting out that information. I always block that on my channels if I know it's on, because it's just gossip from, maybe the family's gossip, but it's still gossip. I don't know that the family is telling the truth. I don't know if the family is misinterpreting. I don't know. And it may be absolutely true, but I don't know. And therefore, I'm not going to go there. Absolutely not going to go there. Yes. Staging usually done by someone who knows the victim. Yeah, if they're trying to make it look like it's not them. Yeah, because one of the problems is if you know the victim and the police are going to knock on your door, and so what you don't want to do is make it look like a burglary gone bad or a serial killer or something else besides what would look like you. Yes, so that's usually the big reason for that. So it's shock value. Yeah. Posed is the proper word. Thank you, Carrie. That just word went out of my head. It's not staged. Posed. Thank you. Yes, posing the body is amusing to the serial killer, because it makes total sense. I mean, if I were a serial killer, I can see where the posing thing would work. It's fun to play with bodies. First of all, it's fun to pose the body for photographs of your own, and it's fun to have the detective see the body that way. It's fun to torture the family by posing their loved one in a humiliating position. And so, yes, posing as opposed to staging. Thank you. That word went out of my head. Okay, I hear you loud and clear. Pure evidence only. Yes, just because I'm an educational channel, I'm not a channel where we're going to solve the crime. And so let's bring out every single person, and we'll throw out every single thing we've ever heard, and we'll just go to town on it. That's why, for example, when it comes down to like Richard Hall on his Madeleine McCann videos, I liked his first one, and after that, I found his stuff appalling. because he just pulls stuff from anywhere, and it's all nonsense. And there's no evidence. It's not based on evidence. He's just making up stuff, and people are just crazy about it. They're like, oh my God, see? And I'm like, there's no proof of this stuff. He's just putting stuff out there. Yes, that's true. It's also control and power for the offender. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about serial homicide is power and control. So it's just how you get your thrills for your power and control. Yes and no. Lisa says, remember the couple who was posed by the pool, just like their sculptures. That again is in the mind of the beholder. We got to be again careful of that. I don't think they were posed like the sculptures. I don't think that's what it was. I think they were just killed in that location. It just happened to have some creepy sculptures, like in the next room or wherever it was, that kind of look like that. I don't necessarily think they're connected. And there again, we have to be very careful. We can say could be, but I personally don't think they were posed that way. I think they were just there. So again, we can't jump to something and then we say, oh, see, this tells us something about, this is where sometimes the profilers go wrong. That would tell us about the killer's way of thinking. He posed them like the statues because he wanted to humiliate them and humiliate their taste in art. Maybe that's just where he put them, and that has nothing to do with anything. But I don't know that. See, I never thought that was absolute. Yes, that is a Canadian case of the very rich elderly people who were in their inside pool, and they were strangled. And yeah, that was really sad. Yes, that's correct. Barry and Honey Sherman. Yes, I did a video on that, so you can look for Barry and Honey Sherman. I did that video. So yes, that is a Canadian case, but that is the correct one. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Now, Lisa, that's true. It's weird. Remember the coincidence issue? Yes. There are so many weird things that happen in crimes, and sometimes it's true. I mean, it could be that I can't remember how close to those statues that was. I think I addressed that in my video. But let's say you're leaving them there and you look up and you see those statues and you go, huh, that's funny. It could not be any big message either. Just could be it amused him at the time. So we have to be careful of our conclusion on that rather than that's interesting. So we are elderly now. Yes, we are. Every time I see that in the newspaper, an elderly woman was, I don't know, an elderly woman was robbed. And then I read it and it goes, she was 65. And I'm like, that's not elderly. I forgot how old the Shermans were. I thought they were close to 80. So I'm only 67. So, okay, I'm not elderly till I'm 80. I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with that. Let me tell you about another case. Now, here's one, and I don't, coming to a conclusion on this, I cannot do at this point, but it is this one is bizarre. Let me find it here. Okay, where'd you go? Okay, here we go. Okay. The Debbie Collier case. This case just happened a few days ago, so I haven't heard much information yet. This is Debbie Collier. Let me see if I got this right. Okay. All right. And by the way, John Kelly, criminal profiler John Kelly, decided to analyze this on television, and I was floored by the stupidity of the analysis. Sorry, John Kelly, but really? Oh my God. Anyway, I'll explain this. So Debbie Collier was last seen on September 10th and was found dead the next afternoon, 60 miles away. Okay, so her car was in the shop. She'd rented a vehicle. Now, her husband claims that he slept. You know the old problem with the husband's never sleeping in the same room as the wife when they go missing? Yeah. But he sleeps in a separate room because he says she snores. Now, sometimes that is a claim because you don't want to, that takes you away from knowing when your wife left and knowing what's happening. So that's often used by a guilty person. However, I will say this. It's not always true, because there are many married couples who do not sleep in the same bed or in the same room. And it has nothing to do with the fact they are not getting along at all. That's not why. And I'll confess to this myself in my marriage, because after 20 years of marriage, I told my husband to go in the other room. Why did I tell him that? Because he played soccer in his sleep and he kicked the crap out of me. And I know he didn't do it on purpose. And it was, and I also wanted to stay up late and read books. And he would go, trying to get me to turn the light off, and just started getting, it was just, he was having trouble going to sleep. I didn't want to turn the light off because I didn't want to sit someplace else in the house. So I'm like laying there and he's going, and then we finally get to sleep, or I finally get to sleep. And then he turns over and kicks me in the night. And I'm like, one day I said, I'm just done with this. I can't take it anymore. So we had we're in an old 200-year-old house, which had a door between the two rooms. So I had a king bed here and there was a queen bed right there. So we just finally decided he'll sleep in the queen bed. Then when he wanted to go to sleep, he closed the door and I could read and I'll do what I wanted to. And then he wouldn't kick me in the night. Does that mean we didn't have some fun? No, it doesn't mean that. Because there's before he goes in the other room and he can come back from the other room. And doesn't mean that. So don't believe that just because a couple doesn't sleep together, literally sleep together, that there's something fishy. However, sometimes you do question when they say things like, I slept in it, like the other case where the woman was found hanging in the woods. And the husband said, well, I got to go to the bathroom and then I didn't want to bother her, so I went to sleep on the couch. I was a little more suspicious of that one. But I don't know if that's a weird routine they have. So you got to look at routine. Is this normal? So anyway, he did not know his wife had left the house. She drives away. And then this is what happens. Okay, so so far the investigators have found no evidence of either a suicide. Okay. Now her body was found naked, kind of down a little a hill, and she's supposed to have burn marks on her stomach. So it certainly sounds like something bad happened to her, but nobody knows where she went or why she left the house. Now, this is where John Kelly comes in with something I thought was ridiculous. Her murder, according to a criminal profiler and psychotherapist with experience interviewing serial killers, shows signs of possible repeat sex offender. What? Oh, shows signs of a possible repeat sex offender. I'm sorry. This is one crime. I don't know how you see it's a repeat sex offender on this, because I don't know. There's not that much going on here. But it could also be the work of a budding serial killer. Okay, so now it's either one or the other. In other words, you're done now. All right. This has all the signs of a sexual attack with volcanic rage. I don't know that, I haven't seen any evidence that she was sexually assaulted yet. And volcanic rage. Volcanic rage. Okay. I didn't know rage could be anything but volcanic, but okay. I have to think he was trying to cover his DNA. He set just her stomach on fire to cover up the DNA. So I guess we can all picture what happened. What? Nothing is certain yet. Well, that's for sure. All right. So this is where you call jumping to conclusions on things you have no evidence of. Apparently, he knows no more than we do as far as what evidence is out there as to what happened to this woman. So anyway, this is the weird part about the whole story. Collier went missing. Okay, Collier went missing on September 10th after sending her daughter $2,385 to be exact, which is pretty exact. Why $2,385? They haven't explained that yet. Over the Venmo app, and a cryptic message reading, quote, "They are not going to let me go. Love you. There is a key to the house in the blue flower pot by the door." Now, she lives with her husband. So why would the daughter need a key to the house that she lives in when she lives with her husband? Why don't she just knock on the door and say, "Dad, can I come in?" Why would she send $2,385 over Venmo? Why would she say they're not going to let me go? Because if they're not going to let her go, why does she even have her phone? Why does she have her phone and is sending messages through money through Venmo? If she has the phone, why isn't she calling the police and asking for help? What is going on here? Now, they say she doesn't have psychiatric problems. But apparently she and her husband had a very reclusive life, so that makes me wonder. A canine unit found her remains under grisly circumstances, whatever grisly means. And again, be very careful when you're talking about reporters, because grisly to them, to me, is like, seen this before. Grisly circumstances down an embankment in a woods, a quarter of a mile from the vehicle, which is quite far from the vehicle. So probably not going to be carried that far. So either she walked or somebody walked her. Those two possibilities. Nude and partially burned with charring on her abdomen, but no place else, which is interesting. And her right hand was clutching a tree. So if her hand was clutching a tree, she clearly wasn't dead. She wasn't dumped. Clearly she was not dumped there. And I don't know where her clothes are. Are they in the vehicle? Are they on the way? Were they taken away? So if the clothes are nowhere to be found, then you can pretty much guess it. Well, there's probably a second person unless she got naked in the vehicle and tossed her clothes into a trash bin, half an hour from that location. And before you say that's ridiculous, things like that happen. So you got to be very careful. Some people stage. Here's a staging question. Some people stage their own murders. They're really committing suicide, but they stage it as a murder. So they'll do these really weird things. Also, it can be possible if she's psychotic at that moment. She could do incredibly weird things, and it'll end up looking like a murder. Now, I'm not saying it's not a murder. It certainly looks like a murder. I'm just saying you got to keep that. Right now, we don't have enough evidence to get anywhere with this. So Kelly does say, I think she still had life in her if she tried to reach out and pull herself up by a branch. Okay, that's true. She clearly wasn't dead if she's grabbing a branch. Collier's vehicle was abandoned near the scene. He believes her killer may have left on foot. Okay, or had an accomplice waiting in another vehicle. So either somebody followed her vehicle, pushed her off the road or something, and then got her out and marched her into the woods, possible, or somebody got in the car with her and then marched her into the woods. But you would think they'd take the car away then, because it's weird then you'd have to have somebody in the car with her and somebody in the vehicle. So you'd have to have at least two people involved in the crime. And she did say they, but who's they? If it's they, it's probably not her husband and daughter, unless. So that's a weird one. Then he says the type of work is not usually done by a woman. Not usually. I'm not saying this couldn't have been done by a man and a woman, possibly a team, but unless there is a hefty insurance policy. Now he's actually referring to the husband and the daughter, that they wanted to get rid of mom, and so they drove her away. And they did whatever they did. And then they could have taken her phone. Mind you, if somebody knows the Venmo, right? They can take her phone and type in the Venmo thing and send money to, the daughter could send the money to herself, in other words, and pretending that her mother sent it to her when she actually was the one who did it. That's possible. See, all these things could be on the table. And then he says, why do you have to burn her? The burning is important to us. Is it a signature? Oh, the stupid signature stuff. No, likely it is not a signature. Likely there's something that happened there. No, don't know what it is. The signature thing is the excessive idea that every serial killer has to leave some kind of artistic proof of his I don't know, makes him happy. So he has to do specific things like tying bows around all the necks or putting a cross on their head. This is one crime and a burn mark on her abdomen. It's not proving any signature. So that's John Kelly doing the FBI serial killer stuff. And then he's going on about that. They're trying to cover up the DNA, which I don't know that that's true, because I don't know why the DNA would just be on that part of her body. If they were just after her money, why does she have to be naked? I don't know. So I don't know yet whether there is any idea. Now, he's talking about another case where a woman was sexually assaulted and he tried to destroy her body with flames in order to get rid of DNA. This is true, as long as you douse the whole body in gas or something. But she's just got some burn marks on her abdomen. I'm not sure that really proves that he's trying to get rid of a DNA. Then he goes on, it's unclear whether the attack on Collier took place. If it began at home, there could have been a grudge or a financial motive, but it could have happened while she was out in a possible carjacking or some other random attack. So just cover all the bases there. And then somebody else came along and said this. A neighbor said they heard a commotion at the murdered woman's house the night before she vanished. The murdered Georgia mom, found dead and naked in a ravine, may have been involved in screaming and fighting at her home the night before she went missing. So you see, this would put the question of whether something was going on with the husband, right? The husband and the daughter said she was missing. There was a commotion at her house, and she frequently heard shouting from the Collier's home atop a small wooded hill. Somebody came up to visit on weekends and in the evenings, and there's loud screaming and fighting. The visitor, supposedly saying the visitor was a younger woman, which would sound like the daughter, right? The victim's husband told investigators he last saw his wife at 9 p.m. Saturday, and her car was still in the driveway when he left for work the following morning. Oh, no, now he's saying that her car was actually there. He told investigators he slept separately from his wife because he snored and he didn't see her before she went missing. Okay, so he got up. She wasn't up and around making coffee or whatever, but he saw her car in the driveway. So there, theoretically, she was there in the morning, which is unusual. The daughter said, my mom was everything to me. So there we are. That's all we really know about it. Very weird sounding crime. That message is very strange. That message makes no sense. The message either, I really don't understand the exact number, because if I were going to send some money, I mean, first of all, think about it this way. If you're going to be dead, if you're going to be alive, you can send money to your daughter anytime, can't you? If you're dead, your daughter's going to get your money anyhow. So why would she, in the moment where people are killing her, send money to her daughter on Venmo and say they're not going to let me go? What? So something is very fishy. I'm having a hard time with this being a complete stranger situation where she's sending these weird messages. It doesn't make sense to me at all. So I'm again, if somebody said, what do you think about this crime? I would have to say, at this point, I do not know. I cannot say it's a serial killer because I don't know whether she was sexually assaulted. This is a weird crime that just because she's naked doesn't mean it's a serial killer. I wouldn't have gone as John Kelly did and immediately jumped up and down and say it's a serial killer, because I don't know, because it doesn't necessarily look that way. And that message is too peculiar to ignore. So I think we have to find out more about the phone, who might have had access to the phone, why her daughter would get that money. I would want an interview with that daughter. Why would her mother tell her daughter where the key to the house was? What does that mean? What does that mean? Now, it could be a cryptic message on purpose. I mean, it's possible her husband with somebody else wanted to get rid of her and drove away and staged this as a serial killer crime. And the husband, I don't know, the husband made the Venmo thing, or she knew it was her husband and somebody and they were going to kill her. And so but why did she say, your daddy's killing me? I mean, why say there's a key at the underneath, see, I'm saying the whole message is very bizarre. And that's where, to come to any analysis or conclusions, if somebody said, hey, can you do a whole show on this? My answer would be no, I don't have enough information to come up with anything, credible or intelligent. I'm just mucking around going, well, that's weird. And that's weird. That's all weird. Like Cindy James. Yeah. Okay. Cindy James, Heather, thank you. Cindy James says she's the one that, I believe committed suicide, but she kept saying people were after her all the time. And they were stalking her, and then they were attacking her. She got attacked so many times. This girl and eventually she ended up dead. And I do think she did commit suicide, but a lot of people think she was murdered. I did a show on Cindy James. So yes. Molly says, I say I'm old and clunky. No, you're not. Let's see. Honey was 69. Oh, she was a youngin'. I'm going to kick that elderly out. She was only 69. Why did I think they were older? How old was he? Maybe he was a lot older. God, because that's 69. I'm just a couple years off of that. So, so yeah. So this whole weird case. I'm going to wait before I analyze anything further on the case because I would have to know a whole lot more. And it seems that one of the issues with this particular case is why did she leave the house in the first place? Where was she going? I mean, she had, normally, was it Saturday morning or whatever? He said he went to work and then car was supposedly home. I don't know whether the car was home or not at that time, whether he did do something to her and maybe he took her phone and then later on sent this thing. Where's the phone now? Was it with her body? Where were the pings coming off of? Were they from that location or were they coming from someplace else completely? I don't know. This is where investigation comes in. So you really can't analyze a case very well till a proper investigation is done to the point where you've got a whole bunch of evidence, or at least facts, not necessarily evidence, but facts lined up in a row. Who was where, what's the situation with this daughter, the husband, what's the situation with insurance money? Where did she normally go on a day like that? What's in the vehicle? Is there a sign of assault in the vehicle? Is there a sign that there were more than one person? What about the video on the roadways? I mean, there's so much information they have to dig up, where I think it's John Kelly jumping to the conclusion that it's a serial killer at this point. There's just no evidence of that. I mean, she's nude, which looks serial killer-ish, but he went, I think, way too far trying to describe everything that serial killer did. And he doesn't even know if it's a serial killer. So I think you just got to wait a little longer than that. And it's just, based on too little information. And I know sometimes they call you up and they ask you these questions. And again, maybe he said other things and they just ignored him. Maybe he was libeled because that's why I don't do news media anymore. I don't do that kind of stuff anymore because you never get to say what you really want to say. And by the time you see your show, it's like you got one sentence in there and it's completely misquoted. So, yeah. I'd rather leave that alone. So, well, the other one, okay. By the way, the question of what I was going to do, I'm just going to give you a quick little hint here of what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the Ryan Widmer case this Sunday that Benny wanted me to do so much. And also, I'm also going to do the death of Bill Bishop. Two cases. And I'm just going to give you a quick flash of what I'm going to be in front of this picture, my thumbnail. But this is on the left, we have the Ryan Widmer, and Sarah Widmer is his wife, who was found. He said she fell asleep in the bathtub and drowned. And the other one is the Bishop case. And supposedly the dog strangled him with the dog leash. So those are the two cases I'm going to talk about on Sunday. And so that's going to be fun. Let's see. Mary says, thanks for covering the Collier case. So strange. I'll be following the story closely. Yeah, I'm real curious myself. I'm going to keep probably every day. I'm going to put her name in because it's very strange. And I think that's what differentiates it from me just jumping to saying it's a serial killer. Because if she had been, if she had disappeared out of a parking lot after she went shopping at the store and then she was walking to her vehicle and she got abducted and she's found raped and strangled in the bushes, I would think it's probably a serial killer. But this is a bit strange. The question is, where was she? And it's the phone message that messes this whole thing up, because the phone message makes no sense to me. It sounds like she's being kidnapped and she's being she cannot escape, but yet she still has the phone. So was she in I don't know what kind of vehicle she had. I forgot what that was. Was it? If it wasn't a van, I mean, she could have been in the trunk of the vehicle. Somebody could have put her, two guys could have put her in the trunk of her own vehicle, for example, and then driven off. And she could have been texting from the trunk, But again, why wouldn't you say, I've been kidnapped? I've been kidnapped, and then I'm in the trunk of my car, and then call 911. Call 911. I mean, why aren't you calling 911? Why would you be texting your daughter? Say, it's very weird, and I'd have to examine this a lot more to have any clue to making any sense on that. Heather says, I don't understand how Kelly could jump to that analysis considering the phone message. I do not know either. Maybe he was misquoted by the media, but I think that, or maybe he's just telling the media what they want to hear. And he does a lot of stuff with serial homicide, so maybe he just wants to go down that road and say it's a serial killer. I know that I've been known for being an expert on serial killers, and so they like only call me when they think it's a serial killer. They say, "So Pat, do you think a serial killer's out there?" And I'm like, and I remember I did one show, and this is one of the shows that got me to stop doing this. They interviewed me for like half an hour, and they kept asking me the same question over and over again. They're like, "So do you think it's a serial killer?" And I said, "No, not really." And they said, "Well, but could it be a serial killer?" And I said, "I don't see the evidence that it is, but could it be?" So they kept going on. And what they want you to do, by the way, is when you're doing a not a live interview, you're often looking off camera. So they're talking to you like you're talking to someone who's not there. And you're supposed to repeat the question because they're going to insert it. And so when they say, "Do you think it's a serial killer?" You're not supposed to say no or yes. You're supposed to go, "It could be. I've thought about this, and it could be a serial killer." You have to have a whole sentence. You say, "Do you think it could be a serial killer duo?" And then you'd say, "Sometimes serial killers work in pairs, so this could be a serial killer duo." And that's the way you have to do it. But here's what had happened. I think I forgot after half an hour of trying to get what they wanted out of me, and I wouldn't go there. I made the mistake of saying something like this. How did I say this? Something like, the odds that it's a serial killer are almost zero, but you never know. It could be a serial killer. And then they cut out the whole first part. I said, it could be a serial killer. Something like that. So sometimes they just do this to you. Let's see. What is this? Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Florence says, shout out to Mr. Dolt Papini. Because I call Papini adult, for being with a person who's Munchausen syndrome for years and years and doing, that's what I say. People who are usually married to a Munchausen syndrome psychopaths, usually as long as they get their needs met, they ignore almost everything else that person does that's wacky or concerning or full of or lies. And I call them dolts because they're not, let's say, bad people. They're just kind of dolts. So anyway, Florence, who has watched my stuff, says, shout out to Mr. Dolt Papini for telling the cops they should keep Sherry because he didn't want her around his kids. Oh, good. All right. Interesting. I really enjoyed the interrogation video. Yeah, I did not know he told them that. That's now maybe the dude is waking up. Molly says, Pat, outside of police giving facts of a case at a press conference, what kind of source is useful for information? Well, in theory, that should be where we get our information because, as I pointed out, I have had families make claims that are completely untrue because I'm working on the case, so I know it. And they'll ask me these questions. They'll say, well, I'm pretty sure that drug dealers killed my daughter. And I'm like, where do you get that from? Well, there's these two drug dealers that, they hung around her school. Okay, what does that have to do with her? Did she buy drugs from them? Well, she's a real pretty girl. And I would, they had to have known she was there. Okay, just because your daughter's pretty doesn't mean that drug dealers are going to kill her. You see, that's the kind of thing that happens. And remember, I just did the case of on the cruise ship, and the family said she was such a pretty girl that all these guys were like after her, and that was just not realistic. She was a perfectly pleasant looking person, but she wasn't what you call a beauty. I don't believe there were guys all over her. I think that's an exaggeration. But if you, and then, so if you listen to the families, they have their viewpoint. And they also get very excited when the child is or loved one goes missing or is murdered. They see things sometimes in a very exaggerated way, not meaning to mislead people, but they just think everybody's a killer. They think this person did it. Then they think that person did it. And then they thought, I overheard this, and I'm pretty sure her cousin killed her. I mean, you got to be very careful of this. So I would say, and sometimes, by the way, the police can give information at a police conference, and that can be not true as well. My basic belief is this, and that's why I don't do shows where we try to solve crimes. That's why I am opposed to internet shows that do they do Delphi after Delphi after Delphi show. And they keep bringing up every single new thing, like the murder sheet, everything. They keep interviewing people, and some of that stuff is completely not true. And it bugs me because they're dredging up a lot of stuff to the public. Same thing with, I found with the Adnan Syed case. I think that the podcast Serial and the podcast Undisclosed, which was his own lawyer, gave a lot of, they throw all these things out to get the public to believe something, this could happen and that could have happened. And eventually people started believing that stuff had validity to it, but it doesn't necessarily. So the problem I have is that I don't think you need to get involved. That's my personal opinion. It is not our business as the public to solve these crimes. If the police come out and say, for example, about this woman, this was the vehicle she had. This is where the vehicle was found at this particular time. If anybody has any information, if you know somebody who, based on what the crime is, same thing with Delphi. If you saw anybody on the path at that time, if you recognize the guy's voice, if you recognize this man in the video, if you have to get with specific information, you ask the public to get you suspects with the specific information. But being on the internet and listening to all these shows, and you live in Idaho, and the murder happened in Florida, you don't know jack. You're not going to solve this case. You can watch 50 of these shows, and all you're going to do is have your own private little. It's entertainment. It doesn't do anybody any good. So, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't rare occasions, but a lot of times we just get too wrapped up in stuff that we have no business being in. We need to do something else with our life. Then wait for the next piece of information so we can solve the crime. We are not going to. And we are, that's the police job. And we can learn. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with learning or having an interest, but I just think to know what the actual information is. I've even said myself, I cannot, even when I analyze a crime online, that's why I say it's educational. I want to show how you analyze evidence, but often I said I wasn't on the inside of this crime. Now, some of the crimes I have been on the inside, like superbikes. I worked that crime. I worked with the police, the sheriff's department, chief. Now I've forgotten the name of the department. I worked there for 1 week. I saw all the evidence in front of me. I know Todd Kolek did not kill those people in the superbike shop. He's a serial killer and he killed other people. He did not kill those people because I saw the evidence. I read everything. So I'm not just getting what's on the internet. And I can be an authority on that case. So there are certain cases I can be an authority on, and there are other cases where I can only say, based on public information, the most accurate information I can access, this will be my analysis of the case. But I think there's just so much junk on the internet. It's so much junk. And so you cannot necessarily believe this show or this person's interview or the family even. It's just, you can find it interesting, but I just wouldn't go there as far as, oh, I know now this person says this, so it must be true. Not at all. I wish you could work Delphi. I wish I could too. I'd like to, because I really don't know what they've got. I really don't know at all what they've got. No clue. Heather says, there's a strong attitude of entitlement that has developed regarding case information. That is true. Good point, Heather. Anyone who wants it should be able to have it, and it doesn't work like that. No, it really doesn't. And what's happened is we're getting a mob mentality, and people on the outside decide somebody is guilty, and they go after that person, and that person may not be guilty at all, and they just destroy that person's life, ruin their name publicly, and all this stuff. And again, I believe you can purport a theory, but I think it gets really dangerous when groups of people purport theories that they're all getting together in this big fat gang. And I've even seen it with the Madeleine McCann case. Bothers me tremendously when I see that based on stuff that is not actual evidence, especially the stuff where I say there's this ring of pedophiles and it's involving big people in politics and all this stuff. It's just all nonsense. And there's not any shred of evidence to point anywhere there. There's only two things that ever happened in this case in Madeleine McCann. Either the parents neglected her and she died from that neglect in the place and they covered it up, or there really was an abductor. Those are the two. There's no big child. The parents aren't all molesting each other's children, and there's no big, huge pedophile ring, and all this stuff's nonsense. So there's only two basic things, one or the other. So just it gets to be too crazy. And let's talk about this one. There's a 4-hour interrogation of Skylar Nemitz. I'm not sure which one this is. Especially if the police if it's actually the video of the actual interview, those are really interesting to learn from. You can see how the police do their interviews, if they're doing them well, if they're not doing them well. You can see people's reactions. You can learn a lot from interviewing. I think that's quite nice. Bye, Lisa. Lisa's heading out. Wait a minute, Russ, the underwear thief. Russ, yeah, you're talking about Russ. Are we talking about the Colonel? So we're Colonel Russell? Wait a minute. Oh, I don't know about this one about Skylar. I have to look this one up. The Russell Williams interrogation. Yeah, I'm going to do a show on Russell Williams. That's the Colonel in Canada who he does not look good in ladies' underwear. Let's put it that way. He does not look good. He's like, woo. He's like really creepy looking. I'm in China. He's creepy looking. Okay, let me see what else I wanted here. It's getting rather late. I thought I started at 7. Okay, I got a little more time. I was going to point out. Here's an interesting example about somebody asked me to talk about the I don't know how to pronounce her name. Lisa Blakie. This is the question is, was it a lone killer or was it a gang of killers? And here's where I just think this is kind of an interesting one because let me see, where's Lisa? Oh, Lisa, where'd my Lisa go? Dang it. Lisa vanished. Hold on a second. Lisa went away. Hold on. There she is. I got to bring her back. There we go. Okay. So Lisa Blakie, this poor unfortunate girl, and this is what she looked like. This took place in. Okay, this took place in. Is this the Australian case? Let me be sure I got this right. I think it's Australia. Hold on a second. Christchurch. Where's Christchurch? Am I in Australia? Queenstown. I think I'm in Australia, right? I wish when they do an article, they would actually tell you where the case was for people who aren't familiar. Oh, okay, Australia. Oh, thank God. I finally found it. Okay, so this is Lisa. And Lisa was a mess. That's all I can say. Lisa was a terrible mess. And she was this happened 22 years ago. She was 20 years old. They called her troubled, and she was severely troubled. She was murdered after she started hitchhiking toward the West Coast. Okay, so she was hitchhiking out there in very little clothing, but she had her puppy with her named Chaos. And so this guy picked her up. And this is the guy that picked her up, this guy here. And he was convicted of this crime. Let's see, what's his name? Hold on a second. It's a very long article here. Okay, her ride is gingery-headed man called Timothy David Taylor. He just turned 30, and he drove this vehicle. And this vehicle was seen, so it's known that she got in the vehicle. Okay, because she was at a shop, at a service station. The hitchhiker, that was the girl. She bought a chicken roll, a $20 phone charge card, and a chocolate milk drink from the shop. And he just thought she looked awful young, and she shouldn't be with some guy, this guy. And so she gets back in the car, and off they go. And then this was on Wednesday, and on Sunday morning, some fishermen find her body in the Porter River. And this area looks like this. So this is really not a great area to be hitchhiking in. It's pretty creepy. And there's, somebody to pull over and kill you off is pretty easy. So her body was found face down, facing upstream, mostly underwater and below a willow tree. A boulder was on her shoulder, and her body was identified, and she had been strangled, and she had 7 knife wounds in her left leg. Now, this is interesting because one of the theories is, which the first thing I thought about is, if she's got 7 knife wounds in her left leg, what side of the car do they drive on in Australia? Okay, now I got to look this up. Is it right or left? I don't know, because that's one country I haven't driven in, haven't been to. Okay, Australia. Hold on a second, I got to look this up. Australia, driving side. Okay, driving side is okay. Driving is on the left. Okay, well, let me look at that car again. Okay, where's the wheel? Let me see where the wheel is on that car. The heck, I'm trying. What's the wheel looks? Oh, wait a minute. That's can anybody see that where the wheel the wheel is for the driver? One would think if it's like British driving, that the wheel would be on the right side of the car, right? Would that be accurate? The wrong side. Now. I'm trying to see this because, the reason I asked this question was because when I first read this, just off the top of my head, and if you're driving, if the person's on the left side of the car and she's on the right side of the car and she's got 7 stab wounds in her leg, you can see the guy just going like this. Okay. Now, if she's on the other side, that doesn't make sense. See, so that even little differences like that, you got to make sure you know where now. So theoretically here, if the Australia drives is on the left, right? Yeah. So they're still driving on the left. Then one would think the car would have the wheel on the right. However, I have seen sometimes in certain countries where some people have an American style car, and the driver's wheel is actually on the left side of the car and not the right. So again, you can't jump to conclusions on this. You actually have to know, how it works. The wheel is on the right. Do you see the wheel, Florence? Or are you guessing? Because I couldn't see it. You saw the wheel? Okay, I'm going to look again, but I did not. Okay, maybe I'm going to go to my. I'm going to try to make this picture bigger. Oh yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay, I see it now. I couldn't see it in this picture in front of me. Very good. Okay, I made it bigger on my. Oh, you know what it is? You all are seeing it on a bright screen, and when I tape these shows, I cut the light down on my screen because it reflects into my glasses. So the screen is really dark, so I could not see the wheel, the steering wheel on this screen, but I could see it on my iPad, which is brighter. So, all right. So we got that straightened out. So you see how that changes things. Because when I first read that, and interestingly enough, when I was reading this article, they actually said he could have done that when she was in the car. And I'm thinking, well, that would be because, hold on, so I'm having trouble here getting rid of this thing. Okay. That could be because he did this. But if it's her left leg, he's going to be hitting her right leg if he's in this position. So that, to me, I'm thinking that probably doesn't work. But here's another thing I want to point out, which is where your analysis can go down the drain. All right, let's assume it really was an American style car. and he's driving, and she starts to try to get out of the car. So he takes a knife and goes stab, 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 right? He would stab up her left leg. But that doesn't mean that if he got her out of the car and he's strangling her and she's flipping over or whatever, he didn't just stab her in the left leg, just because that was a leg that was available when he started stabbing. You see, so it gets a little confusing sometimes. You have to, when you analyze a crime, you have to really look at every one of the pictures to try to determine when something happened and not just assume it happened here because it could. Maybe her legs were crossed. Could be. Again, I don't know what side of the left leg it was. Was it on the left side of the left leg or the right side of the left leg? Was she trying to climb over the seat? So she turned around. See, this is a thing we don't know but this has some importance because the defense claims that the defense is trying to say he did stab. She was stabbed in a car. Do you know why the defense is claiming that? Because there's no blood in his car. That's why. You see? So they're going to use that. So essentially, this guy got convicted, all right? Now, what they've said since then, in case you're wondering who this other, was it a group of people who could have killed her? So let me tell you about this fellow that was convicted. All right. So let's see. While she was hitchhiking, she was on the run. She was going to meet up with an old boyfriend named Spaz. This is a great group of people. As a member of the Epitaph Riders motorcycle gang. Her idea was to regroup, then head to Nelson, and afterwards to Australia to see her mother. Wait a minute, I thought she was in Australia. Now I'm confused. Where is she? Okay. Wait a minute. Where is she? Oh, why am I not knowing where she is now? Okay, wait a minute. Is she in New Zealand? I don't know that area of the world very well, and you can see I'm sitting here struggling now to try to figure out where the heck she is. What the heck? Hold on a second. Hold on. Oh, this is annoying. Let me just put her name in again. Maybe somebody will tell me where she was murdered. Because I didn't say it in the article, but you're supposed to know the murdered country. Yeah, how about this? Oh, come on, somebody tell me what country. It's so interesting. None of them want to say what country she's in. Because the assumption is that us folks from, I'm going to, Yaldhurst. Where's Yaldhurst? Somebody tell me where Yaldhurst is. Maybe we can figure out what country it is. Yaldhurst. It's outside of Christchurch, which is where? New Zealand. Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay, sorry. Wrong. That looks so much like Australia to me. Okay. All right. Interesting. That's in New Zealand. So that's why she was going to Australia to see her mother. You see how confusing that gets? Yes. Yes, it was New Zealand. So there is a Christchurch in New Zealand. Yeah, none of these articles actually said New Zealand or Australia. And I don't know why I thought it was Australia, why it came up that way. But none of them actually, they were given the names of towns, but, I'm not recognizing them because it's not Adelaide and it's not, Sydney, I would know those things. But so apparently she's in New Zealand. And I guess New Zealand has an area that looks like this. All right. Interesting. Okay. All right. So she was hanging around this motorcycle gang. So, and she was also a prostitute, just to put that in there. And that's not a questionable, it's not like a question that she was. She worked in a lot of brothels and things like that. And so she wanted to go. Oh, now I find the New Zealand thing here. So yeah, she grew up. She'd seen much of the underbelly of New Zealand life. She had a tangled drama of high-paying sex work, sickness, drinking, drugs, gangs, and constant news. She loved her family, so she kept the sordid details of her life away from them. She liked to go out with white power type gang members. Some said she did it for status and that she couldn't make up her mind if she was a biker chick or a hippie or something else. She started with a lost breed in Nelson, progressed to the Epitaph Riders, and now had connections with the Road Knights and ended up with the Devil's Henchmen. The Devil's Henchmen. That's these guys here. Okay. So she's around a lot of really questionable people, and this is what the defense attorney is going to use. So it says that, okay, so she she's trying to find this boyfriend, and she took a $200 taxi ride to Timaru to find him. And then a whole bunch of stuff she did. And it's very messy, so I'm not going to get into every bit of messy stuff. But then, all right, then this guy who picked her up, okay? So now, let's see, where is it? Okay, hold on a second. Okay. This is a crazy story. Okay, let me be sure I got the right guy here. So it's one of these stories where there's so many people in there and you can't quite. Oh yeah, Taylor. Okay, so Taylor, the guy who has been charged with killing her, I think convicted of killing her. Where's that character? Okay, so this guy. So would this guy kill her? Okay, he was found guilty of murdering her after a jury trial. Jail for life, but not released under strict conditions until April 2021. Oh no! But when he got out, he had these release conditions he had to follow, and he breached his release conditions by going to Manchester Street 13 times to visit sex workers. 13 times. So he apparently, let's see, what kind of character was he? Let me find the stuff about him. Okay. By the time he turned 30, he was a wife beater, a rapist, a drug dealer, a burglar, a fraudster, a gambling addict, an armed robber, and a thief. But he never murdered anybody. Oh, you see that? Then we should believe everything he does is not murder. Around the time of Lisa's death, he was something of a one-man crime wave. So just before Christmas, he held up the Darfield Hotel with a sawed-off shotgun and kidnapped the barman. He had also been dropping dud checks around town in the days after Lisa went missing. He met with a supplier of morphine sulfate tablets to do a drug deal, and he robbed a lotto shop. All right, he liked to steal everything, pretty much. He had been married. He had 3 children, didn't see them. And so in the 3 years before he became a suspect in Lisa's murder, he worked as a laborer and a sawmill worker, and he lost all his jobs through theft and erratic work habits. He was also a wannabe biker, but wasn't very good at that. He appeared to have an unusually high sex drive. A previous partner told police that he wanted to sleep with all her friends. No, he tried to sleep with all her friends. He wanted sex all the time, every day when we were together. And he would go to and visit lots of prostitutes. All right. A sex worker, now deceased, told police she had accompanied him on a drug run up north. When he stopped in the middle of nowhere and threatened to leave her there, she didn't have sex with him, so they had sex on the bonnet of the car. So, and it goes on like this. So anyway, he picked her up. Now the defense attorney is this disgruntled retired detective. I mean, I'm not sorry, that's not the defense attorney. A disgruntled retired detective thinks that this might not be the person who killed her, that it might be this motorcycle gang that killed her instead. Okay. So the claim is that somehow in the middle of that flaming absolutely nowhere place, he dropped her off and the motorcycle gang found her and they were the ones who killed her. Now, so this is one of these cases where really, I mean, so when I talk about this, it's because I want people to understand that defense attorneys will come up with everything they can. In this case, I don't know if the defense attorney is working with, let's see, who's it working with? It's a very long article, but they found in his car, they found the wrapper from the store. So they know he was with her. There's no question that he was with her. He also tossed her. Okay, let's see here. Okay. After he went over the bridge, he also tossed her belongings out of the car. Kept her phone car and used it. So why are her belongings being tossed out of a car if she got out of the car? You know, so somewhere along the claim is that he got mad at her and forced her out of the car, and then he threw away all the things. But he didn't do anything bad to her, you see. But the last meal she ate was the one she ate with him. They found it from stomach contents. So she died right after he pitched her out of the car, supposedly. Or he killed her. Then he acted like a guilty man. He lied to the police, repeatedly denied he gave her a ride. He changed his story, asked his girlfriend to give him an alibi. And the dog was found right where her body was. So the dog was found, then her body was found. So all of this goes together with this guy. However, like most circumstantial cases, the Crown case against Taylor was not open and shut. So now we have people coming in and saying that they saw a young woman with luggage and a dog after that point in time. So therefore, it wasn't this Taylor guy who killed her. So you got a couple of people claiming this. And I use the word claim again, because a lot of times what the defense will do is they will dig up just about anybody who will then say, I saw this person. And they'll say, I think I saw them on Wednesday, when they either didn't see them at all or they actually saw them on Tuesday, So you gotta be real careful of this stuff. And also, this Adnan Syed case, the same problem. Now they're saying there's two other suspects, and that's why they didn't properly investigate these guys. Well, that's because even when you're doing an investigation, people will say, oh, so-and-so said this, and there's a creepy dude over here. And you've got a list of 50 creepy people. And some of them have said things that somebody said, that person said something. But the problem is all their evidence points to Adnan Syed. That's where the evidence points to. It doesn't point to any of those other 50 people. So you're not going to suddenly put aside Adnan and hit that investigation and go investigate 50 other useless tips that don't lead anywhere. You might investigate some of the most important ones, but some of them are just going to go, okay, I looked into that, and it was just nothing. But now the defense is claiming, oh, there were two that they should have investigated better because they could have done it. But the evidence doesn't point to those two. It points to Adnan Syed. And in this case, they're trying to now say a motorcycle gang did this to her, and that the timing is not quite right, and he couldn't have gotten it done. But yet all the evidence points to Taylor, and he was the last person seen with her. And right after, she ate the food, she ended up dead because the stomach contents, that was the last thing. Then it was still there in her stomach. So, unless he was so incredibly unlucky that he's on this empty area. Look where he is. He's on this empty area, and he dumps her out, and this motorcycle gang who happens to know her just happens upon her right then and immediately kills her for no reason. So, this is the kind of thing that the defense attorneys will come up with to try to get yet another trial. So now it says here, they're looking to decide whether its scarce resources should be used to look into this is Taylor's news story. Oh, Taylor's got a news story too. Okay. So this is now 20 years old, and you've got a lot of people who lie, and you've got a lot of tremendous amount of characters. And do you really have the money to reopen this entire case, to go after every single person that everybody else says could have done it, when all the evidence pointed to the guy they actually convicted? And so this is the problem sometimes with the appeals process and the defense attorneys that have been given money to work on these cases, especially if they can get the public to send in money. Sometimes some of these cases get huge funding from the public. And then that defense attorney, hey, I'll tell you this. Okay, so there's a case. So I'm like, oh, maybe that guy didn't do it. And I tell you, the public, to send me money. So now you send money for the case, and I get paid, because I got to work. So now I'm getting paid $80, $100 an hour, 40 hours a week. I'm making a great payday, and maybe getting attention and getting in movies and things like that, documentaries. So all this money is coming in. I will dig up everything I can dig up for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, because I'm getting paid. And by the end of 20 years, everybody's so confused because now there's so much more information that now they start questioning whether, maybe that guy didn't do it. That's how the system is working. And I think it's gotten a little out of hand, shall we say. Oh, that was just kind of a crazy case in that one. What was this? Oh, yes, it was new. Okay, let's see. Discuss that case in our next chat. What case is that? Oh, the Russ Williams one. Oh yeah, Russ Williams is, I don't have to do a show on him. Victimology. I'm not. What intrigues you the most is victimology. Oh, interesting. And that would be in the. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, but victimology is very interesting as far as that's how you can often identify who committed the crimes, because of the victimology. How they become a victim is very, very important, whether they're high risk or low risk. This poor girl could have been killed by almost everybody. Lisa Blakie. Was it Lisa? I'm sorry, I just forgot her name. Let me pull it up here. Yeah. Lisa Blakie. She knew a whole bunch of horrible people of all sorts, and they were drug dealers. They were violent men. They were perverts. They were, there were tricks that she, got paid, that paid her for sex. There were just so many unscrupulous kind of people she was around. Anybody could have killed her. But the point being is the last person that was seen with her, to me, all the evidence is clearly there. And it's really a shame now that sitting there trying to free this guy and then set up, making all these other claims that just don't have a lot of validity to them. Just because these guys exist aren't nice doesn't mean they committed a crime. But that's what defense attorneys do. And it drives me kind of crazy. The victimology in the Russ Williams case. I can't remember who he chose as his victims at this point in time. I don't remember. I find the case fascinating, but for other reasons. There's a YouTube video documentary about her. This is Lisa Blakie. Yeah, and I mean, I didn't realize when this now I feel really bad. Now I look over at the top of the page and it says stuff.co.nz. I should have known it was New Zealand because it was at it's a New Zealand site. Sorry, it's late in the Hangout and I not altogether home now. But lone kill or gang hit. And you see, oh yes, there is a podcast. Oh, of course there's. The story is featured on Stuff's The Long Road podcast. So Martin Van Benen investigates. And here it is, the long read. Yeah. See, this is, and I do have issues with podcasts for this reason, because they look a lot of times for anything that they can make a podcast out of. And the point of the podcast oftentimes, and the same is true for mass media, documentary people, they will take a case that's already been solved, like OJ, for example, and somebody came up and said, I forgot what the claim was on the OJ case. It was just really stupid. But they will, any weird claim that will say the original person isn't the one who did it will get people to watch. So Lisa Blakie, in my opinion, this Taylor killed her. It's a fairly obvious thing, but because it was very circumstantial, because I don't believe he stabbed her in the car. That's why there's no blood in there. All you had to do was pull over and tell her to get out of the car. She gets out of the car and there is no evidence in the car except for her phone card, wrappers from her food, and the fact that people saw her there. So the evidence was she was in his car. They just didn't have evidence that he killed her because he did it someplace else away from the car. And so they couldn't physically connect him to the scene, but clearly there was no way anybody else was going to be there in the next few minutes to kill her. So it makes no sense. All his stories, when you interview a person, they're full of lies and deceit. I mean, we're not talking about false confessions. We're talking about a guy lying like a dog. And he's got his whole history as sex assault. He's a rapist. I mean, there's really no reason to doubt that this guy did it. But if you want to make a podcast and you want to say, oh, maybe he didn't do it. And I'm bothered by that because I find it disingenuous and I find it a bit fraudulent. So if I believe, for example, I don't know, let's take a case which I think is pretty open and shut. I'm going to try to think of one off the top of my head that clearly somebody did something to somebody. We can take Scott Peterson. I have no question that Scott Peterson killed Lacey. But if you want to make a documentary, you say, I think Scott Peterson is innocent. Now, there's that proof that it may have been Lacey saw some people robbing a house nearby. They're the ones who did it. And the documentary people, this is what documentary people do. They all sit around a table and go, what can we muck up and make a good show out of. And they'll go, yeah, we could do Scott Peterson. We just say, he didn't kill Lacey. That would make a good show, wouldn't it? Because weren't there those? Oh, yeah, let's do that. And then they put together a show and they find every expert they can and every witness they can to try to validate that there's that reasonable doubt that Scott did anything to Lacey. And they look for every way, like a defense attorney, to make it look like it's not him. And they make a huge documentary out of something like this. And I find that really offensive. I mean, I understand if the defense attorney does this, but when people just make a show to get ratings and to get views and to sell advertising, and they don't care what they do to the family of the victim, that now Lacey's family, would have to go through all this. I mean, they're trying to get him a new trial as it is, but to have a documentary start saying, oh, Scott didn't do it, that's just annoying. I mean, and I just think it's, unless you really had something to prove anything else, but just to throw seeds of doubt out there so you can make money, just bugs the heck out of me. I think it's just sick. Pat, where is your Diet Pepsi? And it's also in here, you see. But this is a little, so I put it in Christine's pretty little mug that she sent me. Yeah. Let's see. Scott's sister-in-law also champions his innocence. See, the more time passes, the more people just go down these roads because the freshness of the case is gone, and you can sow more and more seeds of doubt over time because you forget what all the evidence is. And again, the defense attorney spends a tremendous amount of time, and so do these documentaries and podcast people, digging up crap. And eventually there's so much crap and so much out there, people just get confused. And they start doubting because they've lost the picture. The clear picture was there, and then all this stuff has been thrown into it, and it gets blurry. And then you start saying, well, maybe not. And one of the cases I worked, one of my original cases that I worked years ago, and I can't quite do anything about it at this point. I'm waiting to get a FOIA request. But the detective on the case and I agreed that this guy most likely was the guy that committed the crime. And then after I wrote my book, they charged another guy with it. And the guy was already in prison, and he wasn't going to get out of prison. And they claimed there was DNA that matched him, but it made no sense because there was no DNA ever in the crime. So, and he took an Alford plea, so the case just disappeared out of court on the second day. And the DNA stuff was never presented, and it was very suspicious. Now, one of the things I did was, I'm thinking to myself, because, years had passed, 20 years. And I said, maybe this is the other guy. Maybe, that I was just wrong about this one. And I can be, I went back and I read my notes. I'm like, holy crap. That's why I thought he did it. Because when I read the notes, there was overwhelming amount of information. And that's what the detective eventually, when I got the case reopened, also saw all of that. And he interviewed the guy, and the guy lied, and the guy failed a poly, and all kinds of things. There was a lot of reasons to believe it was this guy. But, all that time had passed, and eventually you forget, what that information was. And if enough information comes in after that, that gets hazy. And I think that's what a lot of defense attorneys do. Adnan Syed, when this first happened, I mean, there was good reason to believe it was Adnan Syed, and the evidence was pretty strong, circumstantially, admittedly, but very strong that he was the guy. And that's why he got convicted. But then time goes on, and they did all this podcasting, and now it used to be this amount of information is now this amount of information, and people just go, well, it could have been somebody else. Could have been. And that's where you end up. So it's so sometimes in this day and age, I just think we have too much information. And that's why I a lot of times when people say, have you listened to this podcast? My answer is no, and I won't, because the podcast is 10 shows long, and a lot of the information is not real factual, and I don't have time to waste on it, and I don't want to be going down rabbit holes with people's, oh my God, and this could be true and that could be true. So, I like to, that's why I don't comment on cases. Once I've done an analysis of the case, I leave it alone unless something comes up that I can really say anything about. Like with Delphi, I don't know why the hell, no, they're in the river. I don't. I'm not going to do a new analysis of the case based on the fact they're in the river because I don't have any information. I'll wait and see. And if one day, if there's something really worthwhile, commenting on, I will. But, I won't comment on every suspect that people have dredged up and done shows on. It's just, I just think that's misleading. And I don't think it's helpful to the police. I don't think it's helpful to the family. I don't think it's helpful, to the case. I don't. I just think it's a whole lot of extra noise, shall we say. Extra noise. And, but I think these days we're getting a lot more extra noise continually because you'll see so many of these cases that were pretty cut and dry are now getting appeals. And they're now like the Adnan Syed case he lost all his appeals and still he's freed because of our Baltimore State's attorney, Marilyn Mosley, who's not exactly, well, shall we say corrupt? And she's just looking for publicity. And out of the blue, she just says, okay, let him go. And then we'll think about another trial. Well, when we get the DNA back and we'll think about another trial. That's not how the appeal process is supposed to work. And she went around the appeal process because of all the noise from the podcasts and all the other media. Because, interesting enough, once Serial came out and then Undisclosed came out and the HBO did their thing, I think there was yet another one. Not one of them was proving Adnan Syed is guilty. All of them were maybe he's not guilty. Every single one of them wanted to throw the reasonable doubt out there, the seed of doubt, because that's why people watch the show. They don't watch it to just say, oh yeah, he's guilty. That doesn't make a good show. So the whole nature of podcasting and the whole nature of documentaries is to sow seeds of doubt. Unless it's just a missing child like Madeleine McCann, in which case, instead of just accusing the McCanns, you can keep saying you saw her someplace else and you got new suspects. New suspects, that gets people interested. Madeleine McCann, how many suspects? I don't know if you're following the Madeleine McCann case. Can anybody tell me how many supposedly credible suspects they've had? I've lost track of how many credible ones they had. The first guy was across the street. That was the what's his name, who did the interpreting. He was the first one. Then there was wasn't there a guy who, what was he on? A tractor guy or something. He was another one that they said. And then, gosh, I just can't remember all of them. 4? Molly's coming up with 4. Do you know who the 4 were? I say I've lost track. And each time that came up, everybody's like all over it. We have a new suspect, new suspect in the Madeleine McCann case. And then, everybody buzzes around. And then, that adds again to the murkiness of the case because those suspects weren't never based on evidence ever. And that there was any evidence pointing to those suspects. Those were just people that were available to accuse, But other than that, they had nothing on any of them. Even Christian B, he happened to live in town. I mean, and I don't mean in the town, but in the general area, he happened to live in the area. They don't have anything on him at all. None of the evidence points to Christian B. But they threw him out there because it gets everybody excited, and I just say that's my problem with a lot of the podcasts and the way things are done is that people aren't interested in facts. They're interested in conjecture and making things exciting. And yeah, I will admit that gets more attention. It gets more attention, and that's how these. That's why I turn so many documentaries down because they call me up and say, "Will you do this?" And I'm like, "No, I won't," because I don't agree with you, and I'm not going to pretend there's new suspects when I don't think there's new suspects. And I think the guy's guilty as hell. So, I mean, on rare occasions, I think the only time that was actually not true was in the Martha Moxley case, because in the Martha Moxley case, people did not like Michael Skakel, and he got convicted on crap and no evidence whatsoever. And but because people don't like him, and he got out, he was finally released, and it was overturned. And so they wanted to make a documentary to say it shouldn't have been overturned, that he was really guilty, because people didn't like Michael Skakel. And I went on the documentary and said, I don't believe Michael Skakel is guilty, because I think the evidence always pointed to Littleton. And then they just stabbed me in the back and made me look, they edited the crap out of me. But that was one of the rare times where people were interested in actually convicting the guy that was convicted and then released. So a lot of it's a personality game, and that gets messy too. So, so when you coming back to just what do you believe and what evidence do you stay with? Well, you can be open-minded, and you can look at different things and learn and listen to what they say, but just don't jump to conclusions that what they're telling you is the truth, including what the family says, because they're not necessarily right either. And even sometimes family members disagree with each other. One family member will say this is true, and the other family member will say it is not true. So you just have to be careful about spreading those rumors and jumping aboard with these mobs to say so-and-so is guilty. And it's definitely, Keegan Kline definitely killed those girls. Do we know that? I mean, he's a creepy dude. I mean, he should go to prison for what he did. Just he's asking for naked pictures of underage women. But he also, by the way, is not a pedophile, because if the girls are, teenagers, that's not a pedophile. And just because you ask for naked pictures of girls doesn't mean you're our killer. Because at this point, I don't believe they have a connection from him to the scene. And I think they're looking for that connection, but I don't think they have it. So I don't know that Keegan Kline actually had anything to do with the girl's murder. I can't say that they do. He does. And I won't go there making up stories and getting everybody all excited. I won't do it. So that's just some thoughts I came into today, because of all the stuff that's been going on with information that isn't necessarily accurate. But if you do have a theory, you want to purport a theory, just be sure you stick with evidence. That's all. And base it on the evidence that is actual. Like Madeleine McCann case, we have evidence coming from the police files. So that's pretty good stuff. But stuff that comes off of internet shows may not necessarily be true. Ain't necessarily so. Anyway, I'm going to let you all go now. I've been kind of rambling on tonight. I've been in a ramble mood. I don't know why. But I'll be out of the ramble mood for the Sunday show, which will be on the fall asleep in the tub and drown death, and the guy gets killed by his dog by strangulation by a leash. Okay, so two interesting cases. One guy's still in prison, and one guy was convicted. That's Ryan. He was convicted of killing his wife, and so they determined she did not drown by herself in the bathtub. And the other one, the son was the one accused of strangling his father with a dog leash, but they're saying he did not. They dropped the case against him, saying there wasn't enough evidence. So I'm going to look at those two cases. So anyway, so I'm glad you were here tonight. And I say I was a little rambly tonight. I apologize for that. I have no idea why. I just, I'm in a mood. I guess I'm in a mood. So good night, everybody. Good night, Heather. Welcome for the first time here. I'm glad you were here. And I'm going to go have some more Diet Pepsi. And I will see you all on Sunday for those two cases. They're really fascinating cases. Really, really interesting cases. And I don't know if Benny's responsible for both of them, but Benny's at least responsible for one of those. And I'm sure he's going to be here on Sunday for that case. So Sunday, I might have to move the time, because I might be going to another soccer game with my granddaughter. So I might move it later or earlier. I'm not sure which way. So I will, but hopefully I'll see you whenever I decide to put it together. So, oh my goodness. All of you have a good night. I'm going to go eat something. See you next time.